The rain fell like bullets on West Madison Street, each drop exploding against the cracked pavement of downtown Chicago. It was 2:47 in the morning, and the city had gone quiet, that eerie, unsettling quiet that only comes when even the drunks have gone home, and the early risers haven't yet emerged from their beds. Emily Parker pulled her worn jacket tighter around her shoulders as she stepped off the last bus of the night. November in Chicago wasn't kind to anyone, but it was especially cruel to those who worked the graveyard shift at Rosie's Diner. The cold cut through her clothes like it had a personal vendetta, and the rain had already soaked through her canvas shoes. She was exhausted. 3 double shifts this week, and she still had a nursing exam on Tuesday that she hadn't studied for. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, and her feet ached from standing on them for 12 hours straight the day before. But the rent was due, and student loans didn't care about exhaustion. Emily turned the corner toward the diner, fishing the keys from her pocket. That's when she saw him. A man stood directly in front of Rosie's entrance, perfectly still despite the downpour. He wasn't huddled against the cold or seeking shelter under the diner's small awning. He just stood there, like he'd forgotten how to move. Emily's first instinct was to turn around, get back on the bus, call her manager and say she was sick. Chicago had taught her to trust her gut, and her gut was screaming that something was very wrong with this picture. But then she saw what he was holding, a baby blanket, pale blue with tiny white stars embroidered along the edges. He clutched it against his chest with both hands, his knuckles white from the grip. The blanket was getting soaked, and he didn't seem to notice or care. Emily stopped about 15 feet away, her keys still clutched in her hand. The man's back was to her, but she could see he was wearing an expensive suit, the kind that probably cost more than her monthly rent. It was completely ruined by the rain, the fabric hanging heavy and dark against his frame. "Sir?" Emily called out, her voice barely carrying over the sound of the rain. "Are you okay?" The man didn't turn, didn't acknowledge her at all. He just kept staring at the diner's front door like it held the answers to questions he couldn't bring himself to ask. Emily took a cautious step closer. "Sir, the diner doesn't open for another hour. If you need help, I can—" "My baby died." The words cut through the rain like a knife. They were quiet, barely more than a whisper, but Emily heard them with perfect clarity. The man's voice cracked on the word died, and Emily felt something twist painfully in her chest. I'm so sorry," Emily said, genuinely meaning it. She'd seen grief before. She knew its face, its voice, the way it could hollow a person out from the inside. "Sir, you shouldn't be standing out here in the rain. Do you have someone I can call? Family? A friend?" The man finally turned around, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and a face that would have been handsome if it weren't completely destroyed by grief. His eyes were red and swollen, tears mixing with the rain that ran down his face. But it wasn't the crying that made Emily's stomach drop. It was the emptiness behind his eyes, the look of someone who'd been fundamentally broken and didn't know how to exist in a world that had shattered around them. "My body still waits," the man said, his voice trembling. I keep reaching for him. In the middle of the night, I wake up and I reach for the crib, and his hands tightened on the blanket. But he's not there. He's never going to be there again." Emily felt tears prick at her own eyes. She'd learned in her nursing classes about parental grief, about the phantom sensations that haunted people who'd lost children, the way a mother's arms would ache for weeks after her baby was gone, the way parents would wake up at feeding times, their bodies trained to a rhythm that no longer existed. But reading about it in a textbook was nothing compared to seeing it in front of her. "What was his name?" Emily asked softly, taking another step closer. The man's face crumpled. "Lucas, his name was Lucas. He was 6 months old. 6 months and 12 days. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I found him this morning, just not breathing. They said it was SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. They said there was nothing I could have done differently, but—" His words cut off abruptly, and a sob tore from his throat. The sound was raw and painful, like something being ripped out of him against his will. Emily made a decision that she would later recognize as either the bravest or most foolish thing she'd ever done. She closed the distance between them and gently touched his arm. "Come inside," she said. "Please. You're soaking wet and freezing. Let me make you some coffee. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, just don't stand out here alone." The man looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. His red, swollen eyes searched her face, and Emily had the unsettling feeling that he was memorizing every detail, that he was looking for something. Kindness, maybe, or just the simple acknowledgement that he was still a human being who deserved basic compassion. "You don't know who I am," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," Emily admitted. "Should I?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "Most people in this city do. Most people would run." Emily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain, but she looked at this broken man clutching his dead baby's blanket, and all she could see was someone who needed help, someone who was drowning and desperately needed someone to throw him a lifeline. "I'm not most people," Emily said, "and right now you're just a father who lost his son. That's all that matters." The man stared at her for a long moment and then, slowly, carefully, like he didn't quite trust his own legs, he nodded. Emily unlocked the diner door and held it open. The man walked through, moving like every step required conscious thought. Emily followed, locking the door behind them and flipping on the lights. Rosie's Diner was exactly what it sounded like. A small, old-fashioned restaurant with red vinyl booths, a long counter with rotating stools, and a black and white checkered floor that had seen better decades. The walls were covered with vintage photographs of Chicago, and an ancient jukebox sat in the corner, long since broken and kept purely for decoration. It was shabby and outdated, and had seen 1,000 sad stories play out in its booths over the years. But it was warm and dry, and right now that was enough. "Sit anywhere you want," Emily said, heading behind the counter to start the coffee machine. "I'm Emily, by the way. Emily Parker." The man slowly walked to a booth in the back corner, the one that gave him a clear view of both the front door and the kitchen entrance, Emily noticed. He sat down but didn't let go of the blanket. He spread it carefully across the table in front of him, smoothing out the wrinkles with gentle hands. "Alexander," he said quietly, "but people call me Alex." Emily prepared the coffee, her hands moving through the familiar routine on autopilot while her mind raced. Something about this man set off alarm bells in the back of her head, but she couldn't quite pinpoint why. The expensive suit, maybe. The way he'd positioned himself in the booth. The cryptic comment about people running if they knew who he was. But then she looked at his face again, at the raw, devastating grief written across every feature, and decided that whatever else he might be, right now, he was just a grieving father who needed someone to sit with him. She brought 2 cups of coffee to the booth and slid into the seat across from him. "It's terrible coffee," she warned, "but it's hot." Alex wrapped his hands around the cup, but didn't drink. He just stared at the blanket spread out on the table between them. "Tell me about him," Emily said gently. "About Lucas." Alex was quiet for so long that Emily thought he wasn't going to answer. But then he started talking, his voice low and rough. "He had his mother's eyes," Alex said. "Dark brown, almost black. Maria, my wife, she died giving birth to him. Complications. The doctors tried everything, but..." He swallowed hard. "So it was just me and Lucas. Just us against the world." Emily's heart ached. "I'm so sorry. For both of them." "Lucas was perfect," Alex continued, seeming to need to say it out loud. "He smiled early at 5 weeks. The pediatrician said that was unusual, but Lucas did it. He'd smile every time I picked him up. He knew my voice. He'd stop crying the moment I held him." Tears were running down Alex's face again, but he didn't seem to notice or care. "I did everything right," he said, and there was a desperate edge to his voice now. "I read all the books. I followed all the rules. Back to sleep, firm mattress, no blankets in the crib. I was so careful, so why?" His voice broke. "Why did he die anyway?" Emily reached across the table and gently placed her hand over his. "SIDS doesn't have a reason. That's what makes it so cruel. You did everything right, Alex, everything. This wasn't your fault." "Then whose fault was it?" Alex demanded, his voice rising. "Someone has to be responsible. Someone has to..." He stopped abruptly, clenching his jaw so hard that Emily could see the muscles jump. I'm sorry, I shouldn't..." "I'm not angry at you. You're angry at the universe," Emily said. "That's allowed. You're allowed to be furious that this happened." Alex laughed bitterly. "I've spent my whole life being angry, being cold, being calculated. I built an entire career on being the man who doesn't feel anything." He looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes was devastating. "But Lucas made me feel everything. For 6 months I was just a dad, just a father who loved his son more than anything in the world. And now he's gone, and I don't know how to be anything anymore." Emily squeezed his hand gently. They sat in silence for a while. The only sound the rain beating against the windows and the soft hum of the old refrigerator behind the counter. "Where's your family?" Emily finally asked. "Parents? Siblings?" Alex shook his head. "My parents are dead, and the people in my life, they're not the kind who know how to deal with grief. They're waiting for me to pull myself together, to be who I was before. They don't understand that the man I was before doesn't exist anymore." Emily thought about her own family, the mother she hadn't spoken to in 3 years, the father who'd walked out when she was 12. She thought about her little brother Danny, who'd been killed in a gang shooting when he was 16. She knew what it was like to lose someone and have no one to share that grief with. "I lost my brother 8 years ago," Emily said quietly. "He was just a kid, wrong place, wrong time. And everyone kept telling me that time would make it better, that the pain would fade. But that's not really how it works, is it?" Alex looked at her with something approaching recognition. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't fade. You just learn to carry it differently." "Yeah," Emily said. "Exactly that." They sat together in the quiet diner, two strangers bound by the familiar weight of loss. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets of Chicago clean only to dirty them again by morning. Alex's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, and Emily saw his entire demeanor change in an instant. The grief-stricken father disappeared, replaced by something harder, colder, something that made the hair on the back of Emily's neck stand up. "I have to take this," he said, his voice completely different now, controlled, authoritative. He stepped away from the booth and answered, "What is it, Marcus?" Emily couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Alex's face as he listened. His jaw tightened and his free hand clenched into a fist. "I don't care about the shipment right now," Alex said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Handle it yourself." "No, I'm not coming back tonight because I'm exactly where I need to be." "Marcus," I said, "handle it." He hung up and stood there for a moment, his back to Emily, his shoulders tense. When he turned around, Emily saw that he was trying to put the mask back on, trying to be that cold, controlled person he'd mentioned. But the cracks were showing through. "I should go," Alex said, but he didn't move. "You don't have to," Emily said, surprising herself. "If you need somewhere to just be for a while. No judgment, no expectations." Alex looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You really don't know who I am, do you?" "No," Emily admitted, "but I'm starting to think maybe I don't want to." "Smart," Alex said. He walked back to the booth and carefully folded Lucas's blanket, holding it against his chest. "I'm not a good man, Emily. I've done things that would make you run screaming. I've built my life on fear and control and—" He stopped, his voice catching. "And none of it mattered. None of it could save my son." Emily stood up, maintaining eye contact with him. "I don't care what you've done. Right now, in this moment, you're just someone who's hurting. And I know what that feels like." Alex's phone buzzed again. This time, when he looked at it, his face went pale. "What's wrong?" Emily asked. "I need to leave," Alex said urgently. "Right now. And you need to lock the door behind me and don't let anyone in until the morning shift arrives." "Why? What's happening?" Alex looked at her, and for the first time, Emily saw something other than grief in his eyes. She saw fear. "Because the people I work with, the people I've spent my life controlling, they know I'm vulnerable right now. They know I'm weak. And in my world, weakness gets you." He stopped himself, but Emily understood. Whatever world Alex lived in, it wasn't one where grief was allowed. It wasn't one where showing emotion was safe. "Go," Emily said, even though every instinct told her she was missing something important. "But Alex?" He paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "You're not weak," Emily said firmly. "Loving your son, grieving him, that's not weakness. That's the most human thing in the world." Alex looked at her for a long moment, and Emily thought she saw something crack in that carefully controlled facade. Then he nodded once and stepped out into the rain. Emily locked the door behind him and stood there, watching through the glass as he disappeared into the darkness. Her heart was pounding, and her hands were shaking slightly. What had she just done? Who had she just helped? Emily walked back to the booth where Alex had been sitting. There on the table was a business card. Simple, expensive cardstock, just a name and a phone number. Alexander Carter. Emily picked it up, turning it over in her hands. The name meant nothing to her, but the weight of the card in her palm felt heavy, significant. She should throw it away, forget this night ever happened, go back to her normal life of nursing classes and double shifts and avoiding her past. But Emily found herself tucking the card into her pocket instead. Outside, lightning split the sky, and thunder rolled across the city like a warning. Emily cleaned up the coffee cups, wiped down the counter, and prepared for the morning shift. But her mind kept returning to the broken man who'd stood in the rain, clutching his dead baby's blanket, and the raw vulnerability she'd seen in his eyes. She didn't know it yet, but that moment of compassion, that simple decision to let a stranger in from the cold, had just changed her life forever. At 6:47 a.m. when the morning manager arrived, Emily was still there, leaning against the counter, staring at nothing. "You okay, Em?" her manager asked, noticing her expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Emily thought about Alex's red eyes and broken voice, about the way he'd held that blanket like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. "Yeah," she lied. "Just a long night." But as she walked out into the gray November morning, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just tilted on its axis, that she'd stood at a crossroads without even knowing it, and the path she'd chosen was going to lead her somewhere she never could have imagined. She pulled her jacket tighter and headed for the bus stop, unaware that 3 blocks away, in a black SUV with tinted windows, someone was taking her photograph. The game had begun, and Emily Parker didn't even know she was playing. Emily's alarm went off at 2:00 p.m., dragging her from a restless sleep filled with fragmented dreams of rain and blue blankets and dark, grief-stricken eyes. She sat up in her tiny studio apartment in Pilsen, disoriented and exhausted despite having slept for nearly 7 hours. The November afternoon light filtered weakly through her single window, casting long shadows across the worn hardwood floor. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from an unknown number and a text from her manager. "Police came by asking about last night. Call me." Emily's stomach dropped. She stared at the message, her mind racing through possibilities. Had something happened to Alex? Had he done something? Was she in trouble for letting him into the diner? Before she could spiral further, her phone rang. The unknown number again. Emily hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Miss Parker?" The voice was male, professional, with a slight Chicago accent. "My name is Marcus Stone. I work for Alexander Carter. We met briefly last night. Or rather, you helped my employer during a difficult time." Emily's grip tightened on her phone. "How did you get my number?" "That's not important right now," Marcus said, and Emily could hear traffic in the background. "What's important is that you're in danger, and you need to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." "Danger? What are you talking about?" "Mr. Carter's business associates became aware of his location last night. They also became aware of you. Your interaction with him has been noted, and there are people who might see you as either a liability or leverage." Emily's mouth went dry. "I don't understand. I just gave him coffee. I was trying to help someone who was grieving." "I know that, and Mr. Carter knows that," Marcus said, his tone gentler. "But the people we're dealing with don't think that way. They think strategically. They think about weaknesses and opportunities. So what are you saying? That I'm in danger because I was kind to someone?" "Yes," Marcus said bluntly. "I'm sorry, Miss Parker. I truly am. But you need to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone. Vary your routes. If you see anyone following you, call this number immediately." Emily laughed, but it came out sharp and bitter. "This is insane. I'm a waitress and a nursing student. I don't have anything to do with whatever business you people are in." "You do now," Marcus said quietly. "The moment you opened that door." The line went dead. Emily sat frozen on her bed, her heart pounding. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She worked double shifts, studied for exams, worried about rent and student loans and whether she'd remembered to buy milk. She didn't get involved with mysterious men who had business associates and people who thought about leverage. Her phone buzzed with a text from the same unknown number. "Mr. Carter would like to speak with you. He wants to apologize and explain. Tonight, 8 p.m., address attached. You don't have to come, but he hopes you will." An address in Lake Forest appeared below the message. Emily quickly searched it on her phone and felt her stomach drop even further. Lake Forest was one of the wealthiest suburbs of Chicago. The address Marcus had sent was for a private estate. What had she gotten herself into? Emily spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze. She tried to study for her nursing exam, but the words swam on the page. She tried to call her manager back, but the call went to voicemail. She tried to convince herself that this was all some kind of mistake, some bizarre misunderstanding that would resolve itself. But she couldn't shake the memory of Alex's face when he'd looked at his phone last night, the fear she'd seen there, the urgency in his voice when he'd told her to lock the door. At 6:30 p.m., Emily made a decision that she knew was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. She got dressed, pulled on her warmest jacket, and headed for the train that would take her north to Lake Forest. The journey took over an hour. Emily watched the city change through the train windows, the dense urban neighborhoods giving way to suburbs, the buildings getting smaller and more spread out, the streets getting cleaner and quieter. By the time she got off at the Lake Forest station, she felt like she'd traveled to a different world entirely. The address Marcus had sent was a 20-minute walk from the station. Emily passed massive houses set back from the road, their windows glowing warmly in the winter darkness. Cars that cost more than her annual tuition were parked in driveways. Everything was clean, manicured, perfect. When she reached the address, Emily stopped and stared. It wasn't just a house. It was an estate. A long driveway curved through carefully maintained grounds, leading to a 3-story mansion that looked like something from a movie. Warm light spilled from the windows, and Emily could see the silhouettes of trees in the backyard, their bare branches reaching toward the darkening sky. A man stood at the gate, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit despite the cold. He looked at Emily as she approached, and she saw him speak quietly into a small radio. "Miss Parker?" he asked as she got closer. "Yes," Emily said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Mr. Carter is expecting you. Please come in." The gate swung open smoothly, and Emily walked through feeling like she was crossing some invisible threshold from which there would be no return. The man, clearly some kind of security, walked beside her up the long driveway. "Mr. Carter asked me to tell you that you're safe here, that you're a guest, not a prisoner. You can leave whenever you want." "That's reassuring, I guess," Emily said, though her heart was still racing. The front door opened before they reached it, and Marcus Stone stood framed in the doorway. He was in his late 40s, Emily guessed, with graying hair and intelligent eyes that assessed her quickly but not unkindly. "Miss Parker," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. I know this must all seem very strange." "Strange doesn't quite cover it," Emily said, shaking his hand. "Where's Alex?" "In the nursery," Marcus said quietly. "He's been there most of the day. Won't come out, won't eat. He asked to see you, but—" Marcus paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "He's not in a good state, Miss Parker. What you saw last night, that vulnerability, that grief, his position doesn't usually allow for that. And now that the dam has broken, I don't think he knows how to put the pieces back together." Emily followed Marcus through a house that was both beautiful and oddly impersonal. Expensive furniture, tasteful art, everything perfectly arranged. But no family photos, no personal touches, nothing that made it feel like a home rather than a showroom, until they reached the second floor. Marcus stopped outside a closed door at the end of the hallway. Even through the wood, Emily could hear it, the soft sound of someone crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, broken sobs that seemed to go on and on. "He's been like that since he got home this morning," Marcus said. 4 hours now." Emily's heart twisted. "Has he slept at all? Since Lucas died?" "No," Marcus said. 48 hours now. Maybe more. He won't take anything to help him sleep. Says he can't." Emily looked at the closed door, then back at Marcus. "Why did you really bring me here?" Marcus met her eyes steadily. "Because in 20 years of working for Alexander Carter, I have never seen him cry. Not when his parents died. Not when his wife died. Not when he's been hurt, threatened, or cornered. He built his entire life on being unbreakable. But last night, he broke, and the only person he wants to see is the waitress who showed him kindness when he needed it most." "I'm not qualified to help him," Emily protested. "I'm not a therapist or a—" "He doesn't need a therapist right now," Marcus interrupted gently. "He needs someone who sees him as a grieving father, not as Alexander Carter. You did that last night. No one else in his life knows how to do that." Emily took a deep breath and knocked on the door. The crying stopped immediately. For a moment, there was only silence. "Alex?" Emily called softly. "It's Emily, from the diner. Can I come in?" More silence. Then quietly, "The door's unlocked." Emily pushed it open and stepped inside. The nursery was beautiful and heartbreaking. Pale blue walls with hand-painted clouds. A white crib with a mobile of stars and moons hanging above it. Shelves filled with books and stuffed animals. A rocking chair in the corner with a soft blanket draped over it. And sitting on the floor beside the crib, still wearing the same ruined suit from last night, was Alex. He looked even worse than he had in the rain. His eyes were bloodshot and swollen. his face pale and drawn. He held Lucas's blanket in his lap, and surrounding him on the floor were dozens of photographs. Lucas as a newborn, Lucas at 2 months, 3 months, smiling in his father's arms. "I can't stop looking at them," Alex said hoarsely. "I keep thinking if I look long enough I'll memorize every detail, every expression, the exact color of his eyes, the way his hair curled at the back of his neck." His voice cracked. "I'm terrified I'm going to forget." Emily closed the door quietly and crossed the room. She sat down on the floor beside him, careful not to disturb the photographs. "You won't forget," she said gently. "That's not how it works. The important things, the things that matter, those stay with you." Alex picked up one of the photos. Lucas at 4 months, laughing at something off camera. He laughed for the first time on a Tuesday. I was feeding him, and I made a stupid face, and he just laughed. This perfect, beautiful sound. I called Marcus in from the next room just to hear it again. "Tell me more," Emily said. "Tell me about him." And Alex did. For over an hour, he talked about his son, about the first time Lucas had grabbed his finger, about the way he'd fall asleep on Alex's chest, his tiny hand curled against his father's heart, about the smell of his hair after a bath, about the songs Alex would sing to him at 3 in the morning. Emily listened to all of it, asking questions, letting Alex share every memory he needed to speak aloud. His mother never got to know him, Alex said eventually, his voice thick with emotion. Maria died minutes after he was born. She hemorrhaged, and the doctors couldn't stop it. She held him once for maybe 30 seconds. Then she looked at me and said, "Take care of our baby." And she was gone. "I'm so sorry," Emily whispered. "I promised her," Alex said, tears streaming down his face. "I promised I would protect him, keep him safe, give him everything, and I failed. I failed both of them." "No," Emily said firmly. "Alex, you didn't fail. You loved your son every single day of his life. You were there for him. You did everything right. SIDS isn't caused by something you did or didn't do. It's random and cruel and unfair, but it's not your fault." Alex shook his head. "You don't understand. My whole life, I've been in control. I've built an organization where nothing happens without my knowledge or approval. I've eliminated threats before they could materialize. I've planned for every contingency, but I couldn't control this. I couldn't stop it. And my son paid the price for my arrogance in thinking I could protect him from everything." "That's not arrogance," Emily said. "That's called being a parent. Every parent thinks they can protect their child from the world. We all want to believe that if we just do everything right, nothing bad will happen. But that's not how life works." Alex looked at her, really looked at her. "You said you lost your brother." Emily nodded. "Danny, he was 16. He was walking home from basketball practice and he got caught in crossfire between 2 gangs. He didn't even know what was happening, just wrong place, wrong time." "How did you survive it?" Alex asked desperately. "How did you keep going?" Emily thought about the question carefully. "Honestly, I didn't. Not at first. I fell apart completely, dropped out of high school, stopped talking to my friends, barely left my room for months. My mom didn't know how to help me, and our relationship never recovered. I was so angry at the world, at God, at everyone who got to keep their siblings while I lost mine. What changed? Time, mostly. And eventually I realized that Danny wouldn't have wanted me to stop living. He was always pushing me to do more, be more. He's the one who told me I should become a nurse. Said I was good at taking care of people." Emily smiled sadly. "So I went back to school, got my GED, started college. Not because I stopped hurting, but because I decided the hurt couldn't be the only thing that defined me." Alex was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. And what I am is complicated. I'm starting to figure that out," Emily said carefully. "Marcus mentioned you have a position that doesn't allow for vulnerability. Your phone call last night was about a shipment. You live in a mansion with security guards. People apparently think of me as potential leverage against you." She met his eyes. "Who are you, Alex?" Alex looked away, his jaw tightening. "Someone you should stay far away from." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give you," Alex said. "Because if I tell you the truth, you'll leave, and right now you're the only person in the world who sees me as human. I need that, just for a little while longer." Emily should have been frightened. Every rational part of her brain was screaming at her to get up, walk out, and never look back. But when she looked at Alex, at this broken man surrounded by photographs of his dead son, all she could see was someone drowning and reaching for the only lifeline he could find. Okay, Emily said quietly. You don't have to tell me everything, but you need to promise me something. What? Whatever world you live in, whatever you're involved in, it doesn't touch me. I help you grieve your son. You keep your complications away from my life. Deal? Alex looked at her with an expression that was almost pitying. I can promise to try, Emily, but I'm not sure I can promise it absolutely. The moment you walked into my life, things became complicated. Before Emily could respond, there was a sharp knock on the door. Marcus's voice came through tight with urgency. Boss, we have a situation. Alex's entire demeanor changed instantly. The grieving father disappeared, replaced by someone harder, colder, more focused. He stood smoothly, his movements suddenly controlled and precise despite his exhaustion. What kind of situation? Alex asked, his voice clipped. Marcus opened the door. His face was grim. The Morettis hit the diner 2 hours ago. They were looking for you. Tore the place apart, questioned the staff. One of the cooks told them about Emily. Emily's blood ran cold. What? Why would they? Because they're testing me, Alex said, his voice dangerously quiet. They know I'm vulnerable right now. They're seeing if I'm weak enough to be challenged. He turned to Marcus. Casualties, no fatalities. 2 staff members hospitalized with minor injuries. We've already covered their medical expenses and arranged for the restaurant to be repaired. Emily's apartment? Alex asked. Being watched. I've got 2 men on the building, but we can't guarantee her safety if she goes back there. Emily stood up, her legs shaky. Wait. What do you mean, hit the diner? What exactly happened? Is Sandra okay and Tom? Marcus looked at her with something approaching sympathy. Your manager is fine. She wasn't there when it happened. The injuries were to the line cook and one of the busboys. They're being well taken care of, I promise. This is insane, Emily said, her voice rising. I gave you coffee. That's all I did. How does that turn into people getting hurt? Because the people I deal with see everything as strategy, Alex said, and Emily could hear the self-loathing in his voice. They see a stranger showing me kindness at my lowest moment and they think, weakness, opportunity, leverage. He looked at her, and the grief in his eyes was now mixed with something else. Guilt. I'm sorry, Emily. You were right to want me to keep my complications away from your life. But it's too late for that now. So what happens now? Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Alex and Marcus exchanged a look. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Now, Marcus said carefully, we make sure you're protected until this situation resolves itself. Protected how? You stay here, Alex said. It wasn't a question or a request. It was simply a statement of fact. The estate is secure. We have round-the-clock security. No one gets in or out without us knowing about it. I can't just stay here, Emily protested. I have class on Tuesday. I have work. I have a life. Your nursing exam has been rescheduled, Marcus said, pulling out his phone and checking something. I took the liberty of contacting your professor and explaining you have a family emergency. She's arranged for you to take it next week. As for work, the diner is closed for repairs anyway. Emily stared at him. You contacted my professor? How did you even know about my exam? Marcus had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. We did a background check, Miss Parker. Standard procedure when someone enters Mr. Carter's life. A background check. Emily repeated slowly. You investigated me. We had to know if you were a threat, Marcus said simply. You weren't standing in the rain by coincidence. We had to be sure you hadn't been placed there deliberately. Emily turned to Alex. Did you know about this? Yes, Alex admitted. I authorized it this morning, before I asked you to come here. I needed to know you were who you seemed to be. And what did you find out? That I'm a broke nursing student with student loans and a dead-end waitressing job? That I came from the South Side, and my brother was killed in a gang shooting? That my mother and I don't speak because she blamed me for not keeping Danny away from trouble? Emily's voice was getting louder now, anger cutting through her fear. Did your background check tell you that I've worked 2 jobs while going to school full-time for 3 years? That I volunteer at Cook County Hospital on my days off because I want to actually help people, not just study about it? Yes, Alex said quietly. It told me all of that. It told me you're exactly who you seemed to be last night. Someone good, trying to make a difference in a world that hasn't been particularly kind to you. Emily felt tears of frustration burning in her eyes. Then you should also know that I don't belong here. I don't belong in your world, whatever that world is. I should leave right now, go back to my apartment and pretend none of this ever happened. You can't, Marcus said gently. Miss Parker, I understand this is frightening and invasive and not at all what you signed up for. But the simple truth is that leaving right now would put you in danger. The Morettis know who you are. They know where you live. And they won't hesitate to use you to get to Mr. Carter. So I'm a prisoner, Emily said bitterly. You're a guest, Alex corrected, but his voice lacked conviction. A guest who we're trying to keep safe. Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is unbelievable. 12 hours ago, my biggest problem was whether I'd have enough money to pay rent this month. Now I'm apparently caught up in some kind of organized crime situation with people who think I'm leverage. She turned toward the door, needing to move, needing to think. But Marcus stepped slightly to the side, blocking her path without overtly preventing her from leaving. Let me go, Emily said quietly. I can't do that, Miss Parker, Marcus said, and he actually sounded regretful. Not until we're certain it's safe. Emily turned back to Alex, anger flashing in her eyes. Tell him to let me go. Right now. Alex looked at her for a long moment, and Emily saw conflict warring on his face. Finally he spoke. Let her go, Marcus. Boss, that's not... Let her go, Alex repeated, his voice harder. If Emily wants to leave, she leaves. We're not kidnappers. Marcus stepped aside reluctantly. Emily walked to the door, her hand on the handle, but something made her stop. Maybe it was the memory of Alex standing in the rain, broken and alone. Maybe it was the photographs scattered on the floor, evidence of a love that had been real and deep and true. Maybe it was simply the recognition that running wouldn't actually solve anything. She turned back to look at Alex. Tell me the truth. All of it. Who you are. What you do. Why people are trying to use me against you. If you want me to trust you, if you want me to stay here even for one night, then you owe me honesty. Alex closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, Emily saw resignation there. My name is Alexander Carter. I run an organization that controls most of the import and distribution operations on the north side of Chicago. We deal in legitimate businesses, shipping, logistics, real estate. But we also deal in things that aren't exactly legal. We're what most people would call organized crime, though we prefer to think of ourselves as businessmen operating in gray areas. Emily's breath caught. You're in the Mafia. That's the simplified version, yes, Alex said. The Morettis run the south side. For the past decade, we've had an uneasy truce. But truces only hold as long as both sides see benefit in maintaining them. My grief over Lucas has made me appear weak. In this world, weakness is an invitation. And me? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Where do I fit into this? You don't, Alex said firmly. You shouldn't. You're an innocent person who showed kindness to someone who desperately needed it. But the Morettis don't think like that. They see you as someone I sought out during my most vulnerable moment. They think you matter to me, and whether that's true or not, they'll use that perception. Does it? Emily asked. Matter to you, I mean. Am I just convenient emotional support? Or do I actually mean something? Alex met her eyes steadily. I've known you for less than 24 hours, Emily. But in that time, you've shown me more genuine compassion than most people in my life have shown me in years. Yes, you matter. That's what makes this situation so dangerous. Emily stood in the doorway, torn between the screaming voice in her head, telling her to run, and the quieter voice in her heart reminding her what it felt like to grieve alone. If I stay, she said slowly, it's because I believe you when you say you're trying to keep me safe. And it's because I know what it's like to lose someone and have no one to talk to about it. But I need you to understand something, Alex. I'm not staying because I'm afraid. I'm staying because I'm choosing to. The moment that changes, the moment I feel like I'm being held here against my will, I'm gone. Security or no security. I understand, Alex said. And one more thing, Emily added. Whatever happens between now and whenever this situation resolves itself, you don't get to make decisions for me. Not about my school, not about my work, not about my life. You can offer protection, but you don't get to control me. Clear? A ghost of a smile crossed Alex's face, the first one Emily had seen from him. Crystal clear. Emily nodded and stepped back into the room, letting the door close behind her. Marcus visibly relaxed. I'll have one of the guest rooms prepared, Marcus said. Miss Parker, you'll have complete privacy. If you need anything at all, just press the call button in your room. Someone will respond immediately. Thank you, Emily said, though the situation still felt surreal. Marcus left, and Emily and Alex were alone again in the nursery. The photographs were still scattered on the floor, and Lucas's blanket was still clutched in Alex's hand. You should sleep, Emily said gently. You look like you're about to collapse. I can't, Alex said. Every time I close my eyes, I see him. I see Lucas in his crib, not breathing. I see myself picking him up, trying to wake him, realizing he was already gone. I can't go through that again, even in my dreams. Emily walked over and carefully took the blanket from his hands. She folded it neatly and placed it in the crib. Then she started gathering the photographs. What are you doing? Alex asked. Helping you, Emily said. We're going to put these photos somewhere safe, somewhere you can look at them when you want to remember, but where they're not surrounding you every moment. Then you're going to eat something, even if it's just toast. And then you're going to try to sleep, even if it's just for an hour. Emily, I'm a nursing student, Emily interrupted, which means I know that after 48 hours without sleep, your body is going to start shutting down whether you want it to or not. You're grieving, Alex, but you also need to take care of yourself. Lucas would want that. Alex's eyes filled with tears again, but he nodded. Together they carefully gathered every photograph, placing them in a leather album that Emily found on one of the shelves. When they were finished, Emily set the album on the dresser where Alex could reach it easily. Then she helped him up off the floor. He was unsteady on his feet from exhaustion, and led him out of the nursery. Marcus was waiting in the hallway. The blue guest room is ready for Miss Parker, and I've had the chef prepare something light for both of you. Thank you, Marcus, Alex said, and Emily heard the genuine affection in his voice. Whatever else was true about Alex's world, his relationship with Marcus seemed real. They ate in a small dining room. Just soup and bread, but it was warm and comforting. Alex ate mechanically, barely tasting the food, but Emily made sure he finished everything on his plate. Afterward, Marcus showed Emily to her room. It was beautiful, far nicer than any place Emily had ever stayed. A large bed with soft white linens, a private bathroom, a sitting area with a couch and a television. French doors opened onto a small balcony overlooking the grounds. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you, Marcus said. We keep guest wardrobes on hand. If there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to ask. Marcus, Emily said as he turned to leave. How long have you worked for Alex? 20 years, Marcus said, since he was 14 years old. And in all that time, you've never seen him cry? Marcus shook his head. Never. Mr. Carter learned very young that emotions are weaknesses in our world. His father taught him to bury everything, to never show pain or fear or doubt. He's been doing it for so long I don't think he knows how to do anything else. Until Lucas came along. What happened to his parents? Emily asked. They were killed when Alex was 22, Marcus said carefully. He took over the organization then, built it into what it is today. But he did it by becoming exactly what his father had trained him to be. Someone who feels nothing, shows nothing, wants nothing except power and control. But Lucas changed that, Emily said. Lucas changed everything, Marcus agreed. For 6 months I watched Alex become the person I always suspected he could be underneath all that armor. He smiled. He laughed. He talked about the future in terms of someone other than himself, and now, he trailed off. Now he's lost everything, Emily finished quietly. Yes, Marcus said, and I don't know if he'll survive it. Not physically, though the lack of sleep is concerning, but emotionally. I'm afraid he'll bury this grief so deep that it destroys him from the inside. Or worse, that he'll decide, since love only brings pain, he'll never allow himself to feel anything again. Is that why you brought me here? Emily asked. Because you think I can somehow prevent that? I brought you here because you're the only person who's made him feel human in the last 2 days. Marcus said honestly. I don't know if that's enough, but it's something. And right now something is more than we had before. After Marcus left, Emily took a long shower, washing away the stress and fear and confusion of the day. She found pajamas in the closet that fit perfectly, which was both convenient and slightly unsettling given how thorough their preparation had been. She should have been terrified. She should have been planning her escape, figuring out how to get back to her normal life. Instead, Emily found herself thinking about Alex sitting on the nursery floor, surrounded by photographs of his son, looking more lost than any person she'd ever seen. Around midnight, Emily heard it, the sound of someone crying coming from somewhere down the hall. She knew she should stay in her room, mind her own business, let Alex have his privacy. But Emily had never been particularly good at minding her own business when someone was hurting. She put on a robe and stepped into the hallway. The crying was coming from Alex's bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and warm light spilled into the hallway. Emily knocked softly. Alex, are you okay? The crying stopped abruptly. Go back to bed, Emily. Not until I know you're all right. A long pause. Then, I'm not all right. I don't think I'm ever going to be all right again. Emily pushed the door open. Alex was sitting on the edge of his bed, fully dressed, Lucas's blanket in his lap. Tears streamed down his face, and he made no effort to hide them. I tried to sleep, he said, his voice breaking, but I keep having the same nightmare. I keep finding him over and over again. I keep feeling that moment when I realized he wasn't breathing. I can't make it stop. Emily crossed the room and sat beside him on the bed. After Danny died, I had nightmares for months. I'd dreamed that I could save him, that I could warn him not to walk home that way. But I'd always wake up right before I could reach him. It was torture. How did you make them stop? They didn't stop exactly, but they got less frequent. And eventually, I started having different dreams. Good memories of Danny. Times when we laughed together, or when he'd help me with homework, or when we'd sneak ice cream after our mom went to bed. Emily looked at Alex. The nightmares are part of grief, but so are the good memories. Right now, the pain is too fresh for anything else, but it won't always be this way. Alex leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. I don't know how to do this, Emily. I've spent my entire adult life being strong, being in control, never showing weakness, and now I can't stop falling apart. Every time I think I have it together, something triggers me. A baby crying on TV, or seeing Lucas's room, or just remembering the weight of him in my arms, and I break all over again. Then break, Emily said simply. Stop trying to hold it together. Stop trying to be strong. Just let yourself grieve. I can't afford to break, Alex said desperately. People are depending on me. The organization needs leadership. If I show weakness now, the organization can wait, Emily interrupted. Your grief can't. Alex, you just lost your son. You're allowed to fall apart. You're allowed to not be okay. Alex turned to look at her, and in his eyes Emily saw a war being fought. Between the man he'd trained himself to be and the father who'd just lost everything. Stay with me, he said quietly. Just for tonight. I don't want to be alone. Emily knew this was crossing a line. Knew that staying in his room, sitting on his bed, being this close to someone who lived in a world she didn't understand, it was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with the Morettis or organized crime. But she also knew what it felt like to grieve alone in the dark, with no one to remind you that you were still human, still worthy of compassion. Okay, she said. I'll stay. They sat together on the bed, not touching, just existing in the same space. Alex held Lucas's blanket, and Emily told him stories about Danny, funny stories, happy memories, moments that reminded them both that the people they'd lost had been more than their deaths. Gradually, as the night wore on, Alex's tears slowed. His breathing became steadier, and eventually, sometime around 3 a.m, he fell asleep sitting up, his head drooping forward. Emily carefully helped him lie down, removed his shoes, and covered him with a throw blanket from the chair. She should have gone back to her own room then, but she was exhausted too, and the chair looked comfortable enough. She curled up in it, pulling another blanket over herself, and watched Alex sleep. Even in rest, his face looked troubled, his brow furrowed as if his nightmares were still chasing him. Emily made a decision then, in that quiet pre-dawn darkness. She didn't know what the coming days would bring, didn't know how this situation with the Morettis would resolve, or what it meant to be caught up in Alex's complicated world. But she knew that right now, this broken man needed someone to see him as human, and for reasons she couldn't fully explain, Emily needed to be that person. Not because she was falling for him, she barely knew him, not because she wanted his money or protection or anything else his world could offer, but because 8 years ago, when she'd been drowning in grief over Danny, someone had shown her unexpected kindness. A teacher who'd stayed after school to listen, a neighbor who'd brought food when Emily's mother forgot to cook. Small acts of compassion that had reminded Emily she wasn't alone. Now she could be that person for someone else. As dawn began to break over Lake Forest, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emily finally fell asleep in the chair beside Alex's bed. Neither of them noticed the security camera in the corner of the room, or the fact that Marcus was watching from his office downstairs, making notes about everything he'd observed, and neither of them knew that 3 miles away, in a restaurant in downtown Chicago, Sophia Moretti was looking at photographs of Emily Parker and smiling. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Emily woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the sound of her phone vibrating insistently on a nearby table. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was, Then it all came rushing back. The estate, Alex's grief, falling asleep in the chair beside his bed. She sat up quickly, her neck stiff from the awkward position, and looked toward the bed. Alex was awake, sitting on the edge of the mattress, staring at his phone with an expression Emily couldn't quite read. He'd changed clothes at some point, now wearing dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, and his hair was damp from a recent shower. "How long have you been awake?" Emily asked, her voice rough with sleep. "About an hour," Alex said without looking up. "I didn't want to wake you. You looked peaceful." Emily checked her own phone. 7 missed calls from her roommate Jessica, and a string of increasingly worried text messages. The last one, sent 20 minutes ago, simply read, "If you don't call me in the next hour, I'm filing a missing persons report." "I need to call my roommate," Emily said. "She's freaking out." "Tell her you're safe," Alex said. "Tell her you're helping a friend through a family emergency. Don't mention where you are or who you're with." Emily wanted to argue. She hated lying to Jessica, but she understood the necessity. She stepped out into the hallway to make the call. "Emily Parker, where the hell have you been?" Jessica's voice was sharp with worry and anger. "You didn't come home last night, you're not answering your phone, and when I went by the diner it was completely shut down with construction tape everywhere." "I'm okay, Jess," Emily said quickly. "I'm sorry I didn't call. Something came up. A friend of mine is going through a really difficult time and they needed help." "What friend?" "You don't have friends. You have me, your textbooks, and that cranky line cook at the diner who always burns the toast." Emily couldn't help but smile. "His name is Tom, and he doesn't always burn the toast. Look, I can't really explain everything right now, but I promise I'm safe. I'm staying with someone who needs support, and I'll be back as soon as I can." Jessica was quiet for a moment. "This doesn't sound like you, Em. You're the most careful person I know. You don't just disappear overnight to help mysterious friends." "I know it's weird," Emily admitted, "but trust me, okay? This is important." "Fine," Jessica said, though she didn't sound happy about it. "But you better be back for Thursday. We have that physiology study group, and you're the only one who actually understands the cardiovascular system." "I'll do my best," Emily promised, though she had no idea if she'd be able to keep that promise. After hanging up, Emily found Marcus waiting in the hallway, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "Miss Parker," he said, offering her the cup. "I thought you might need this. How did you sleep?" "Better than expected, actually," Emily said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Thank you. Mr. Carter would like to speak with you after breakfast. There are some things you need to know about the current situation." Emily's stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" "It's better if he explains," Marcus said. "But please don't be alarmed. You're safe here." 20 minutes later, showered and dressed in clothes from the mysterious guest wardrobe, Emily sat across from Alex at a small table in what he called the morning room. Large windows overlooked the estate's back gardens where November had stripped the trees bare, but left the landscape somehow beautiful in its starkness. A full breakfast had been laid out. Eggs, toast, fruit, pastries, but neither of them seemed to have much appetite. "I need to be honest with you about something," Alex began, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup he hadn't touched. "The situation with the Morettis is more complicated than I initially indicated." "How complicated?" "Sophia Moretti, she's the daughter of the family patriarch, has been pushing for expansion into our territory for the past year. Her father is old, cautious, content with the status quo, but Sophia is ambitious. She sees my grief over Lucas as an opportunity to prove to her father that I'm weak, that now is the time to move." Emily set down her fork. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means she's going to test me, push boundaries, see if I'll respond with the strength she expects or if I'll fold under the pressure of everything I'm dealing with." Alex finally looked at her. "And it means that anyone she perceives as important to me becomes a potential target." "I barely know you," Emily protested. "How could she possibly see me as important?" "Because I sought you out during the worst moment of my life," Alex said simply. "Because I brought you to my home. Because last night I asked you to stay with me." He paused. "In my world, those actions speak louder than any words could. They signal attachment, and attachment is leverage." Emily felt her chest tighten. "So what do? We wait," Alex said. "We let Sophia make her move, and we respond appropriately. In the meantime, you stay here where you're protected." "For how long?" Alex's jaw tightened. "I don't know. Days, maybe weeks, until Sophia either backs down or until we resolve this situation definitively." "I can't stay here for weeks," Emily said, panic rising in her voice. "I have school, I have work." Your classes have been arranged to be completed online temporarily, Marcus said, entering the room with a tablet. I've been in contact with your academic advisor. All of your professors have agreed to provide remote instruction until your family emergency is resolved. Emily stared at him. You can't just rearrange my entire life like this. We're trying to keep you alive, Alex said, and there was steel in his voice now. I understand this isn't what you wanted. I understand you're angry. But the moment you showed me compassion, the moment you became visible to the people in my world, your safety became my responsibility. I didn't ask for that responsibility, Emily shot back. I know, Alex said quietly, and I'm sorry. If I could undo that night in the rain, if I could have protected you from all of this, I would, but I can't. So now we deal with the reality we have, not the one we wish we had. Emily stood up abruptly, needing to move, needing to think. She walked to the windows and stared out at the barren gardens. This is insane. 3 days ago I was worried about making rent. Now I'm basically in protective custody because some crime boss's daughter thinks I matter to another crime boss. Behind her, she heard Alex stand as well. He came to stand beside her at the window, though he was careful to maintain some distance. I know you didn't ask for this, he said, and I know it's not fair, but Emily, these people don't play by rules you'd recognize. They don't care about fairness or innocence. They care about power and control and sending messages. What kind of messages? Emily asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Alex was quiet for a moment. The kind that remind everyone in this world that weakness has consequences. Emily turned to look at him. In the morning light, she could see the exhaustion still etched on his face, the grief that shadowed his eyes even when he was trying to be strong. But she could also see something else, a hardness, a calculated coldness that reminded her that Alex Carter was more than just a grieving father. He was also someone dangerous. I want to see it, Emily said suddenly. See what? The nursery. I want to help you pack it up. Alex's expression shuddered immediately. No, Alex. I said no, he repeated, his voice firm. I'm not ready for that. You're never going to be ready, Emily said gently. But it needs to be done. You can't keep torturing yourself by sitting in that room surrounded by everything you've lost. You don't understand, Alex said, and his voice cracked slightly. That room is all I have left of him. His clothes still smell like him. His toys are exactly where he left them. If I pack it all away, if I erase all evidence that he existed, then what do I have? You have your memories, Emily said. You have the photographs. You have 6 months of loving your son completely. That doesn't disappear just because you pack away some clothes and toys. Alex turned away from her, his shoulders tense. I can't. Not yet. Emily wanted to push, wanted to make him see that holding onto a shrine to Lucas wasn't going to help him heal. But she also remembered the early days after Danny died, when she'd refused to let her mother touch anything in his room, when she'd slept in his bed for weeks because it still smelled like him. Grief didn't follow logical timelines or rational processes. Okay, Emily said softly. Not yet. But soon, Alex. Because right now that room is a wound you keep reopening instead of letting heal. Before Alex could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression tense. We have a situation, he said. Sophia Moretti just called. She wants to meet. Alex's entire demeanor changed. The grieving father disappeared completely, replaced by the cold, calculating businessman Emily had glimpsed earlier. When and where? Tomorrow afternoon. Neutral territory. The Riverside Gallery downtown. She says she wants to discuss maintaining peace during difficult times. It's a trap, Alex said flatly. Probably, Marcus agreed, but refusing to meet would signal weakness. Alex nodded slowly, thinking. Set it up, but maximum security. I want our people positioned throughout the building, and I want eyes on every entrance and exit. Already in progress, Marcus said. Then he glanced at Emily. She also specifically mentioned Miss Parker. Said she'd heard Mr. Carter had taken in a charity case and wanted to express her condolences. Emily felt ice slide down her spine. She knows I'm here? She knows you exist, Marcus corrected. But she's fishing, trying to figure out exactly what you mean to Mr. Carter. What do I tell her? Alex asked. Tell her Miss Parker is under your protection due to the unfortunate incident at the diner, Marcus suggested. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't give her any emotional ammunition. After Marcus left, Emily and Alex stood in heavy silence. I don't like this, Emily finally said. Neither do I, Alex admitted. But it's how these things work. Sophia postures, I respond. We dance around each other until someone makes a real move. And what happens when someone makes that real move? Alex looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. Then we deal with the consequences. The rest of the day passed in strange limbo. Emily tried to study from the textbooks Marcus had thoughtfully retrieved from her apartment, but she couldn't focus. Alex disappeared into his office for hours, conducting business via phone and video calls, his voice cold and authoritative whenever Emily passed by the door. It was jarring, seeing these two sides of him, the broken man who'd cried himself to sleep last night and the hardened boss who commanded an organization with calculated precision. Around dinner time, Emily found herself wandering the estate. It was beautiful, but impersonal, like a very expensive hotel. No family photos on the walls, no personal mementos, nothing that spoke of the people who lived here, except for one room. Emily found herself standing outside the nursery again. The door was closed, but she could hear something from inside. Soft music playing. A lullaby. She knocked gently. Alex, can I come in? The music stopped. After a moment, the door opened. Alex stood there, still dressed in his business clothes, but looking somehow smaller, more vulnerable. He started, then trailed off. I don't know what I was doing. I came in here to get something, and then I couldn't leave. Emily could see the mobile above the crib was moving slightly, powered by batteries, playing its gentle melody. The room looked exactly as it had before, frozen in time, waiting for a baby who would never come home. Let me help you, Emily said again. Not pack everything away, just make it a little less painful to be in here. Alex looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Together they started small. Emily found a beautiful wooden memory box in one of the closets, and they carefully placed some of Lucas's most special items inside: his hospital bracelet, his first outfit, a small stuffed bear he'd loved. Alex handled each item with reverence, telling Emily stories about them. The bear had been a gift from Maria's mother, who died before Lucas was born. The hospital bracelet had been too big for Lucas's tiny wrist, so Alex had saved it, thinking they'd laugh about it when Lucas was older. He was going to be tall, Alex said, holding up a tiny outfit. The pediatrician said he was in the 95th percentile for height. I used to joke that he'd outgrow me by the time he was 15. He sounds like he was perfect, Emily said softly. He was, Alex said, and tears slid down his face again. He really was. They worked until darkness fell outside, not packing everything away, but organizing, sorting, making the room feel less like a shrine and more like a memory. When they finished, the nursery still looked like a baby's room, but it felt less frozen, less like a monument to grief. Thank you, Alex said as they stood in the doorway looking at their work. I couldn't have done this alone. You're not alone, Emily said, and realized she meant it. That night, Emily lay in her guest room bed staring at the ceiling and wondering how her life had gotten so complicated so quickly. Tomorrow, Alex would meet with Sophia Moretti. Tomorrow, whatever game these people were playing would escalate. And somehow, Emily Parker, nursing student, waitress, nobody special, had become a piece on that board. She thought about leaving. The security wasn't meant to keep her prisoner. She could probably walk out if she really wanted to. But then what? Go back to her apartment and wait for Sophia's people to use her as leverage? Put Jessica in danger by association? No. As much as she hated it, staying here was the safest option, at least for now. Around midnight, Emily heard footsteps in the hallway outside her room, a soft knock on her door. Emily? Alex's voice, quiet and hesitant. Are you awake? She got up and opened the door. Alex stood there in pajama pants and a t-shirt, looking young and lost. I can't sleep, he said. Every time I close my eyes, I see Lucas, but also Maria. I see her holding him for those 30 seconds before she died. I see the promise I made to her, and I feel like I'm drowning in everything I couldn't protect them from. Emily stepped back and held the door open. Come in. They sat together on her bed, backs against the headboard, not touching, but drawing comfort from each other's presence. Tell me about Maria, Emily said. How did you meet? And Alex did. He told Emily about meeting Maria at a charity gala 7 years ago, how she'd been unlike anyone in his world, genuinely kind, unbothered by his reputation, more interested in his thoughts than his power. He told her about their wedding, small and private, about how Maria had wanted children more than anything. She knew the risks, Alex said quietly. The doctors warned her that pregnancy would be dangerous with her heart condition, but she wanted to be a mother so badly. She said some things were worth the risk. She sounds incredible, Emily said. She was, Alex agreed. She made me want to be better than I was. And Lucas was going to be my chance to actually do that, to raise someone who wasn't like me, someone good. You are good, Emily said. You're just buried under a lot of armor. Alex laughed bitterly. I'm really not, Emily. I've done things that would horrify you, made decisions that prioritized power over people, hurt people who got in my way. And yet you cried yourself to sleep holding your baby's blanket, Emily countered. You loved your son with everything you had. That's not nothing, Alex. That's not the action of someone who's completely lost their humanity. They talked until dawn, sharing stories, finding unexpected common ground. When light finally crept through the windows, Alex was asleep beside her, his breathing deep and steady. Emily watched him sleep, this complicated man who was equal parts dangerous and broken, and wondered what the meeting with Sophia Moretti would bring. Whatever happened tomorrow, Emily knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be the same. She'd stepped into Alex Carter's world, and there was no stepping back out. The Riverside Gallery stood like a monument of glass and steel against the gray Chicago sky. Emily watched from the SUV as Alex prepared to go inside, his face an unreadable mask. You stay in the car, he said firmly. Marcus and 2 security personnel will be with you at all times. Be careful, Emily said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Alex looked at her for a long moment, then nodded and stepped out into the cold afternoon air. Inside the gallery, Sophia Moretti waited among modern art sculptures and stark white walls. She was younger than Emily had imagined, perhaps 30, with sharp features and calculating eyes. Alexander, she said, her voice smooth, thank you for meeting me. I was sorry to hear about your loss. Let's skip the pleasantries, Alex said coldly. What do you want, Sophia? Peace, she said simply. Your grief has created instability. I want to ensure that instability doesn't affect our business arrangements. My personal life doesn't affect business. Sophia smiled. Doesn't it? You've been absent for days. You've taken in a stranger. People are talking, Alexander. They're wondering if you're still fit to lead. Let them wonder, Alex said. I've held this territory for 12 years. One tragedy doesn't change that. Perhaps not, Sophia conceded. But it does make one think about the future, about what happens when leaders become distracted. The threat was veiled but clear. Alex felt rage building inside him, the same rage that had kept him functional before Lucas, the cold fury that made people fear him. But underneath it, he felt something else: exhaustion, grief, the overwhelming weight of pretending to be strong when all he wanted was to hold his son one more time. This meeting is over, Alex said, turning to leave. One more thing, Sophia called after him. Your waitress, Emily, is it? Such a kind gesture, taking her in. I hope she knows what she's gotten herself into. Alex froze. Every instinct screamed at him to respond, to protect, to threaten, but he forced himself to keep walking, knowing that any reaction would only confirm Emily's importance. Back in the SUV, Emily saw Alex's face and knew immediately that something had shifted. What happened? She asked. We're leaving, Alex said to Marcus. Now, back to the estate. The drive back was silent and tense. When they arrived, Alex disappeared into his office without a word. Emily found herself alone in the vast house, uncertainty gnawing at her. Hours later, Marcus found her in the library. Miss Parker, there's something you should know, he said carefully. Mr. Carter has made arrangements for you to return to your normal life, effective tomorrow. Emily's heart sank. He's sending me away? He's setting you free, Marcus corrected. The situation with the Morettis requires his full attention. He believes keeping you here puts you in more danger than letting you go. That's ridiculous, Emily said. Sophia already knows about me. Leaving doesn't make me safer. That's what I told him, Marcus said. But he's convinced that distance is the best protection he can offer you now. Emily found Alex in the nursery again, sitting in the rocking chair with Lucas's blanket. You're sending me away, she said from the doorway. I'm protecting you, Alex replied without looking at her. By pushing me away? By going back to being alone with all of this? Emily gestured to the room. That's not protection, Alex. That's you shutting down again. It's what's necessary. Emily crossed the room and knelt in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. What did Sophia say to you? Alex's jaw tightened. She threatened you. Subtly, carefully, but the message was clear. As long as you're connected to me, you're a target. So we let her win? We let her dictate our choices through fear? There is no we, Emily, Alex said, but his voice lacked conviction. You've been caught up in my world for less than a week. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not, Emily agreed, but I'm choosing to stay anyway. Not because I'm afraid, not because you're forcing me, but because I know what it's like to grieve alone, and I won't let you do that. Alex closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were wet with tears. I can't lose anyone else, Emily, I can't. And if something happened to you because of me, nothing's going to happen to me, Emily said firmly. We're going to be smart, we're going to be careful, and we're going to get through this. Together. For a long moment, Alex just looked at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. Over the following weeks, a strange routine developed. Emily continued her nursing classes online, studying in the estate's library, while Alex conducted business. They ate meals together, talking about everything except the danger lurking outside their protective bubble. At night, when Alex couldn't sleep, Emily would sit with him, sometimes in the nursery, sometimes in his room, sometimes just walking the grounds despite the cold. They talked about Lucas, about Maria, about Danny. They shared grief like some people share coffee, regularly, necessarily, finding comfort in the familiar ritual. Sophia made no direct moves, but her presence was constant, a shadow on the periphery, waiting for the right moment to strike. 3 months later, on a cold February morning, everything changed. Emily woke feeling strange, dizzy, nauseous, her body somehow different. She'd been so consumed with Alex's grief and the Moretti situation that she'd barely noticed her own symptoms, until she couldn't ignore them anymore. The pregnancy test she took, one she'd hidden in her bathroom for months from before any of this began, showed 2 clear lines. Emily sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the test, her mind reeling. She'd suspected before, back in November, but fear and denial had kept her from confirming it. Now there was no denying it. She was pregnant, 4 months, maybe more, and she had no idea how to tell Alex. That evening, she found him in the nursery again. But this time, instead of drowning in grief, he was carefully organizing Lucas's belongings into the memory box they'd started months ago. I think I'm ready, he said when he saw her, to start letting go. Not of Lucas, never of Lucas, but of this frozen moment, this shrine to pain. That's good, Emily said softly. That's really good, Alex. He looked at her more closely. Are you okay? You look pale. Emily took a deep breath. There's something I need to tell you. She told him everything. About the pregnancy test from November, about her denial, about the confirmation she'd just received. She watched his face as she spoke, trying to read his reaction. Alex stood frozen, the memory box forgotten in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. You're pregnant? Yes, Emily confirmed. About 4 months along. I know this complicates everything, and I understand if... She didn't get to finish. Alex crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. A baby, he breathed. There's going to be a baby. Emily felt him trembling against her and realized he was crying, but not from grief this time, from something else, something that looked almost like hope. I'm here, Alex whispered, just like he'd whispered to Lucas so many times. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Emily held him back, feeling the weight of their shared journey, from that rainy night at the diner to this moment, standing in a nursery that had held so much pain, but might now hold possibility again. Outside, winter was beginning to loosen its grip on Chicago. Spring would come as it always did, and with it maybe a chance for healing, for both of them. Emily Parker stood in the remodeled nursery, now painted a soft yellow instead of blue, and watched as Alex carefully assembled a new crib. The room still held Lucas's memory box on a special shelf, but it had been transformed into a space for new life, rather than a shrine to loss. Sophia Moretti had eventually backed down, recognizing that Alex's grief had made him not weaker but more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose was unpredictable. Emily had completed her nursing degree and now worked part-time at a pediatric clinic Marcus had helped her secure. And Alex had learned that monsters could bleed, break, and somehow find their way back to humanity. When their daughter was born in August, they named her Hope Maria Carter. Because sometimes, even in the darkest grief, life finds a way forward. And sometimes, the body that waited for one lost love learns to hold another.